What if the thing you've been trying to avoid is actually your greatest creative advantage? We live in a world that treats being alone like a problem. If you're alone too long, people ask if you're okay. If you work alone, you're antisocial. If you spend a weekend by yourself, something must be wrong. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Every major creative breakthrough in human history was born in solitude. Not in meetings, not in group chats, not in noise, in silence. And nature has been proving this for millions of years. Today, we're going to dismantle the myth that being alone is loneliness, and show you why solitude might be the most powerful creative state a human being can enter. Look at nature. A caterpillar doesn't transform into a butterfly in a group. It enters a chrysalis alone. Inside that sealed space, it literally dissolves into cellular liquid before reorganizing into something entirely new. No applause, no collaboration, no audience. Transformation requires isolation. Or consider a volcanic island. Deep beneath the ocean's surface, under crushing pressure and complete darkness, tectonic forces build something new for years, sometimes centuries, before it ever breaks the surface. Creation happens in silence long before it becomes visible. And what about apex predators? Eagles don't hunt in crowds. Snow leopards don't roam in packs. They move alone. Because focus sharpens in solitude. Nature isn't afraid of being alone. It uses it as a strategy. Yet humans, the most cognitively advanced species on Earth, panic at the first sign of silence. We fill it with scrolling, podcasts, notifications, background noise. But creativity requires incubation. When you are constantly surrounded by other voices, other opinions, other energies, your brain is reacting, not creating. Solitude is where reaction stops and original thought begins. Here, what most people don't realize. When you're alone and not distracted, your brain doesn't shut off. It activates. There's a network in your brain called the default mode network. And it switches on when you're not consuming information, when you're walking alone, staring out a window, sitting in silence. This is the network responsible for self-reflection, memory integration, future simulation, idea synthesis. In other words, this is where creativity is assembled. When you're constantly stimulated, notifications, conversations, noise, your brain stays in reaction mode. It's processing, responding, filtering. But when you're alone, your brain starts connecting dots that didn't look related before. That's why your best ideas show up. In the shower, on a quiet drive, during a solo walk, late at night when everyone else is asleep. Even some of history's most groundbreaking thinkers relied heavily on solitude. Albert Einstein developed thought experiments while working alone at a patent office. Isaac Newton formulated early calculus concepts while isolated during the plague years. They weren't in brainstorming rooms. They were in silence. Solitude isn't emptiness. It's cognitive depth. And if nature isolates to transform, and your brain activates in quiet, then maybe being alone isn't the problem. Maybe we're just afraid of what we might discover there. If solitude is so powerful, why do we resist it? Because biologically, humans evolved to survive in groups. For early tribes, isolation meant danger. Alone meant vulnerable. Alone meant exposed. Alone meant you might not survive the night. Look at meerkats, they stand guard in shifts. Wolves hunt in packs. Early humans built tribes around fire. Community was survival. And that wiring still exists inside you. When you're alone, your brain can interpret it as a threat, even when you're perfectly safe. But here's the twist. There's a difference between social isolation and chosen solitude. One is being rejected. The other is stepping away intentionally. And nature shows us this distinction clearly. A wolf separated from its pack against its will struggles, but a lone wolf that leaves to establish new territory. That wolf becomes a pioneer. The same instinct that once protected us from danger now overfires in a world where physical survival isn't the primary threat. Today, the real threat isn't being alone. It's never having space to think independently. If you are always absorbing the opinions of others, always reacting to trends, always seeking validation, you don't develop your own creative identity. And without creative identity, you can't produce original ideas. Solitude is no longer a survival risk. It's a strategic advantage. Here, what happens when you choose solitude intentionally? Your attention consolidates. And attention is power. Look at a lion at sunrise, alone on the savannah. It's not distracted. It's not negotiating. It's not competing for noise. It is calculating. Or consider the deep ocean. The anglerfish lives in total darkness. No applause, no audience, no spotlight. Yet in that isolation, it evolves a biological lantern, its own internal source of light. Isolation doesn't weaken it. It forces innovation. The same principle applies to you. When you're constantly surrounded by other voices, your creativity becomes reactive. When you're alone, it becomes generative. Think about it. If you remove comparison, remove performance, remove social pressure, what ideas would surface? What risks would you take? What version of you would emerge? Even forests demonstrate this pattern. After a wildfire, the land looks destroyed, empty. But that temporary isolation allows nutrients to reset, seeds to germinate, and entirely new growth patterns to emerge. Sometimes destruction of noise is necessary for creation of identity. Solitude is the reset button. It strips away imitation, and what remains is originality. Here's the truth most people never confront. If you're never alone, you're never fully yourself. An eagle doesn't discover its wings in a crowd. It learns to ride thermals alone, high above the noise. A tree growing on the edge of a cliff doesn't compete for sunlight in a dense forest. It shapes itself against wind, against gravity, against isolation. And because of that resistance, it grows uniquely. Even an octopus, one of the most intelligent creatures in the ocean, spends most of its life alone. In that solitude, it develops camouflage, problem-solving skills, adaptability. Isolation didn't reduce its intelligence. It refined it. And that's the shift. Being alone isn't about disconnection. It's about refinement. When you step away from constant input, you stop outsourcing your identity. You stop unconsciously copying. You stop shaping yourself around approval. And something subtle happens. Your thoughts become clearer. Your preferences become sharper. Your voice becomes distinct. Creativity is not born from endless collaboration. It is born from internal clarity. Collaboration amplifies, but solitude originates. So maybe the real question is, why am I alone? Maybe the better question is, what is trying to emerge in this silence? Because throughout nature, throughout history, throughout biology, isolation has never been the end of growth. It has always been the beginning of transformation. Here's the secret they don't tell you. Being alone isn't loneliness, it's your superpower. Every idea you've ever had that felt risky, wild, or too big, it was waiting for your solitude to give it wings. So step away, turn off the noise, sit in silence. Let your mind wander, your imagination run wild, and watch as the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Because in a world that fears being alone, those who embrace it, they become unstoppable. If this changed the way you think about solitude, hit like, subscribe, and share this video, and take a moment today to be truly alone. Your next big idea might be waiting there.